Welcome back to the Expired Podcast by Macy Bookout and Natalie Gard. This week's episode is on the Signal Mountain 3, where three men disappeared while driving ATVs on Signal heading to the Blue Hole.
Welcome back to Expired Podcast.
New.
Yeah, we are in a new office recording place that is also TTM.
So you might see things
things
that
that
matter.
matter everywhere all
Mhm.
the time for the foreseeable future.
But I like it. It's very nice.
It is nice and it's quiet. And
Except for the occasional train.
listen, we're from Chattanooga and it's famous for the Chattanooga Choo Choo.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also just the railroad in general.
Yeah.
So no matter where we record, there's always a possibility that there will be a choo-choo train in the background, and we can't help it.
I think
And
that's
I don't really want to
character.
help it.
Yeah, I don't either.
Because it's what Chattanooga is.
Yeah.
If I ever moved away from Chattanooga, I'm not sure I would be able to sleep because you're so used to hearing a train everywhere you go.
Mm-hmm.
So
It
still
happens.
trains, but new space. We're trying this spot in the new office out right now. I think it'll probably work.
Mm-hmm.
But on any given episode, we might be in another location too that's in the same office. But that'll be just for shits and giggles.
All right, let's talk about the case today. Signal Mountain 3.
Yes.
This happened on July 9th of 1988, where three men on ATVs were killed on Signal Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a huge deal. It made Unsolved Mysteries back in the 90s, which is crazy.
That is crazy.
I
Like
know.
Unsolved Mysteries.
I
That's
know.
That's top.
Mm-hmm.
Top. That
Yes.
was true crime before true crime was popular.
Yes.
It was eerie too.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It was eerie, especially just the time it happened. It was just they didn't have a lot of information for people. They didn't have, all the things that we have today. So
all they had was all the bad, scary things, and that's all they told you.
Mhm.
And it was like at night.
Yeah. Came on at night. Creepy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So July 9th, 1988, two airmen who are stationed in Florida, they come home. Kenneth Griffith is married to Paula Mason. They met in 10th grade, high school sweethearts. They get married right out of high school, and then he goes to the Air Force, and he meets Earl Smock. Earl lived about an hour north
of Signal Mountain, yeah.
So in the same area. Never been to Signal Mountain. It's pretty historical. So they're both 20 years old in the Air Force on leave, and they go to Ken's home in Signal Mountain, where his wife is, where his wife's family is, which brings in Richard Mason, who is Ken, as we may call him, his father-in-law.
Yep.
Paula's father.
Yep.
And so Kenneth and Earl are 20. Richard is 47. They decide all together, they're on leave, let's go up to the Blue Hole. Let's take our ATVs. Let's take some drinks, food.
Which is crazy. Every time we cover these cases, and it's like everywhere people are going, where they've been, what their plan is, where they're from. I'm like, I know that place.
Yep.
Like the Blue Hole is something still today that you just pack some sandwiches, some waters or some beers, whatever. You drive up there and you hike your happy butt onto the Blue Hole. It's like a known, especially in high school, especially when you're young. That's where you go. Solid for Instagram photos now too. In today's world,
yeah, in today's world,
it's not just in today's world that people have started doing this. People have been doing this for years, obviously.
Yeah. So they decide to go up to the Blue Hole, and Kenneth and Earl had four-wheelers, but Richard didn't, so he borrowed one from his neighbor Stanley. So they're driving up to the Blue Hole, and they didn't return the next morning. This was like in the evening they're going up there, and they didn't return.
So say like one of the four-wheelers breaks down or like something happens to it, then you just like get on the back of somebody else's
And take
and
off.
keep going.
Yeah.
So the only reason, if they had planned on coming home, the only reason they wouldn't have
As
is
if something bad
yeah,
happened.
yeah. So
Yeah. So Kenneth's brother, his name is Lee, he goes out searching a day, the next day.
mhm,
And he's looking for them. They decide to call the police and, alert them to
mhm.
that 3 men are missing. And just a few days later, on July 11th, Stanley, who's the neighbor of Richard,
The one who they borrowed
that,
Richard borrowed his four-wheeler.
right,
Mhm.
and Ken's brother, Lee, they go to Hamilton County Police and say, we need to start an investigation. And so they do. And Hamilton County start looking in this area, which is a large area,
Rural.
rural,
Rural.
whatever.
Rural.
It's out there. It's a Tennessee place. I feel like,
Yeah, I
it's a
mean
lot of rural area.
it's mountain there. It's mountainous. Obviously, Signal Mountain, which is massive, by the way. Um, and if you live on Signal Mountain, it's known that they have everything on the mountain so that if you move up there, you do not have to leave the mountain ever if you
Yeah.
don't want to. But outside of that, it is very rural and you're not getting a lot of neighborhoods, especially in the 80s. I mean, it's a lot of trails, a lot of creeks, a lot of just wilderness for hiking, four-wheeling, all the things. So,
yeah. And so Hamilton County's out there, they're looking. And so they bring in cadaver dogs and they find some blood and some bone chips
yeah.
that could possibly be part of a skull fragment.
Yeah.
But they never really, I don't think
Like
that's
nothing
ever.
really comes of that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they were ever able to tie it, together. But I think that's when it went from, okay, they're not just lost or out of gas or whatever. This could be worse.
Yeah, it could be worse.
I think even before that, though, before they did that search, there was a lady that called to report um, 3 ATVs
Right.
that were that were left at a dump site or like somehow ended up at a dump site. And she was thinking, all right, maybe somebody's injured. Like that's usually if you're in that kind of area and you see 3 ATVs, especially if you say you're going home and you pass it and you see them, you might think people are hunting or doing whatever. And then 2 hours later, you're going back out to the store or something and you see them again.
Yeah.
That's when, in where we're from, in our neck of the woods, like you're like, oh crap, somebody could be hurt.
Yeah.
So it's usually just kind of a known thing around here. That's when you call and just say, hey, I noticed 3 four-wheelers are sitting down there and they seem abandoned, but I didn't see anybody.
Right.
That happened, I think, the day before the search. So when they go to check out the four-wheelers, 2 of them have blood on them. One of them doesn't. And then that's when they start the search. And the Air Force also sent airmen to help search for the 3 of them.
Because Kenneth and Earl were in the Air Force. And they contacted the Air Force and was like, is there any reason why these men would go missing, would run away? Did they have any problems? And the Air Force was like, no, they're 2 young airmen. They're combat engineers and there's no red flags there.
Right. And like best friends, I feel like too. It all seems, I think everyone, When you first listen to everything, you're kind of like, wow, there's no sense of urgency. But in my mind, when you're thinking about two young men that are in the Air Force and then a middle-aged man, it I don't feel like you really worry.
Yeah.
It's like that's three men that are fully capable
Yeah.
of taking care of themselves, especially together.
Mm-hmm.
Two of them know this area very well.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really,
Yeah, what could go wrong?
yeah, it's not like
No
two
alert.
girls going hiking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that are 19 and 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So if anyone's like, there's not really a sense of urgency, it's because there wasn't, but rightfully so.
Yeah.
Um,
So 2 days after that, there's this 4 days after that, because it's the 80s and people, there was this woman walking down Big Fork Road in Marion County, which is
it's just like
it's
above
away though.
yeah, it's like
It's in a
miles.
different county for
I
sure.
think it's on the other side of like the Signal Mountain is big, so it's not crazy that it would be miles. I think it's on the other side, kind of on Signal Mountain.
Right. So this lady's just out for a walk and she smells this horrible smell. And she obviously is like, okay, what is that? And she finds this area where she sees like chicken wire and leaves and brush and stuff. And she's like, what is that? And the smell's getting stronger. And she realizes it is 3 bodies stacked on top of each other.
Yeah, like
1, 2, 3.
laid.
No shoes.
Yeah.
All 3, no shoes.
No shoes.
And 2 of them were in airman suits because that is the last thing that Kenneth and Earl were seen in, because they didn't have swimming trunks. They were just going to wear their, army clothes or their Air Force clothes and go swimming.
And truth be told, when you're riding ATVs in that area too, it's not unusual. Like growing up, doing things like this all the time, you actually wear long sleeves, pants, boots, because thorns,
Snakes.
branches, snakes, venomous snakes, anything and everything, and then you just have your bathing suit on underneath. But you're not just going to be in shorts and a t-shirt like riding a four-wheeler on Signal Mountain. That's dangerous.
Oh God, that's dangerous.
There's 1,000 reasons why you wear all the clothes, but they're in air suits. And then shortly, they were quickly identified as Richard, Earl, and Kenneth.
That's so crazy.
They were the whole they were stacked on top of each other. I know.
Why?
Like,
and they didn't try to hide them well.
No, the lady that found them, you could even see them from the road.
Yeah.
Like they were, it was not
well executed if they were trying to hide bodies or whatever.
Oh.
Yeah. So obviously the police is called, and while all of this is happening, they are, checking out different people in the area, asking people what they may have seen, what they may have heard. Did they hear any gunshots? At what time? There's a lot of different stories, but this is the 80s, so
And the bodies were found, I believe, 13 miles away from where the ATVs were found.
Right.
That's a long way.
Yeah.
That's a long way in this area, especially. Like, that's a long, big difference there.
Yeah. But I just don't know why the killer would do. I mean, I get it.
Like, why don't they have shoes on?
Yeah. I heard one theory was maybe because the shoes with the dirt and mud and debris could link back to where possibly the murder happened.
Yeah.
But if you're not going to hide them more than 13 miles away from where you dump the ATVs, why are you taking their shoes off?
Right.
I don't know.
It's very weird.
It is weird.
Yeah, that's one thing. And there's nothing that comes up in this case that makes me feel like the shoes them not having their shoes on, all 3 of them. There's a reason for it. Like, nothing comes up that's like, oh, if they would have had their shoes on, we 100% could have done this or would have not, like, they're not,
Yeah.
it doesn't,
That could be the time though. Like maybe Unsolved Mysteries was showing like how they can relate footprints back to or
yeah,
dirt back
where
to a
they
certain
were, yeah.
area. I
Yeah,
don't know.
soil tests.
Totally.
Okay.
And then there was a couple in this area at the time. So the police are interviewing people.
Mm-hmm.
They heard a gunshot between like really late at night. And then somebody said, I heard a gunshot between like 6 and 8 p.m.,
I
which
think
they left at 6.
multiple at the
Right.
6 to whatever
8.
p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was somebody heard multiple gunshots.
Mm-hmm.
But also, with that said,
Mm-hmm.
this around here in Chattanooga, or like a lot of places in the South, honestly, it's not unusual to hear gunshots when you are in an area like this because people are hunting. People do it for sport. There's also, like, I don't know if this was the case back then, but I know where I live right now, like, there's a shooting range like half a mile down the road. And if you're in my backyard,
Mm-hmm.
you can 100% hear
Yeah.
all the shots at the shooting range.
And why is it that Tennessee, everyone feels the need to set off fireworks all the time?
I will never know.
I don't know either.
And neither will my dogs.
We're all pyros, I guess. So this couple sees them in this area. And this doesn't come out till later because this couple is a man and wife, and the husband, they reports were that there was a lady on the side of the road and she was like waving people on like, I'm okay, it's fine.
Yeah, like I don't need
I don't need help.
Yeah.
And the husband had recently gotten out of jail.
Mm-hmm.
And so this came out years later that this couple was there and saw
Mm-hmm.
some of what happened, maybe not all of what happened, but we're in the area at the time. And so she, she didn't come forward, but it doesn't really pan out. So
Right.
it's just something to note that,
if you look into this case and you see that and wonder why we didn't touch on it more, it's
irrelevant.
Yeah. It comes to nothing, and we're not going to waste your time.
Yeah. But another very important clue is Frank Castile.
Mm-hmm.
And his property, it's 130 acres,
which is a boatload of land.
And it kind of hugs the Blue Hole.
Mm-hmm.
They have like personal access to this area.
Yes.
And a lot of people mistake his property for their property.
And the public, like the access to the Blue Hole, there are a few different ways to get there depending on what road you come on, like where you park, whatever. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that would like park and walk or park and ride bikes or whatever, and you almost like a little bitty leg of his land. If you park somewhere particular, you're going to use a part of that land to get access to the Blue Hole. I know some people are very particular about their land and who's on it and all the things, and all is well and fine with that because it is your land and it's your land. With that said, though, when it's such a, I fence it.
Yeah.
Because
that's 130 acres.
No, I just mean like that little access, and like put signs up. Back then, put signs up. You could barbed wire it easy. Mm-hmm. But either way, people, it's not like they were like, oh, I'm going to purposely go on these people's land to get to the Blue Hole. They thought it was the public land that you get to the Blue Hole from, honest mistake, whatever. Lots of people did it. He didn't like that.
And he had a problem with it, so he called the police, kind of grumpy old man vibes. Mm-hmm. And so the police are like, look, you can't take matters into your own hands, but what you can do is
document it.
Yes. Write down the people you found on your property.
Warn them, say, this part you can't walk on, that part you can, whatever. But write down their vehicles or their names, have them sign it. Right. Yeah, exactly. And tell them, this is my land, don't do this again, go that way.
But he doesn't say it so nicely.
No.
According to witnesses.
I'll be honest, from witness statements, he's kind of a lunatic.
Yeah. Gun-wielding lunatic. But this is the 80s. This is the South. Keep that in mind. Mm-hmm. Because I could totally see my dad, like, where he is now. He's like, grumpy old man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't step on my property. I've
Yeah.
told so many people.
Right.
The police won't help. He just seems like, I don't know what to do.
Maybe if I scare them, they won't do it again.
Yeah.
Right. Still kind of crazy.
Yeah, I know. So this guy, Frank Castile, and his wife.
Well, I do think we should say by crazy, like, he would, like, wave a shotgun
Yeah.
and, like, shoot warning shots in the air and stuff. Like, it wasn't like he just carried a gun and was like, hey, get off my land. Like, he was actually kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Like, not normal
Over
behavior.
the top.
Yes, very over the top.
Over
Erratic.
The top. Mm-hmm.
Erratic.
So when all of these tips come in about this guy Frank, they're like, okay, let's go talk to him. And Frank is married. He has a son, Franklin Jr., which he goes by Trevor. So Frank is married to Susie, and they live on 130 acres near the Blue Hole.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently on the night that all this happened, it was their anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
And they were out camping.
On their land.
So at the scene of the crime. But they were together and they corroborated their stories.
Right. I will say I wrote this down just to cover our basis, but again, certain things we're just not going to get into because it leads nowhere. A year later, they did the family decided to do Unsolved Mysteries, or Unsolved Mysteries reached out to them. They were apprehensive but decided to do it. A few tips came in that police did check out, and valid tips, but like didn't lead to anything, but just like good people that saw it and were like, oh crap, I was there and I did see something. And they called and told them, but nothing
significant
came from it, or like a difference maker. But do we want to talk about the brother and the ride home?
Yeah. So when all this happened, I forgot about that. When all this happened, Kenneth's brother Lee was searching, and the neighbor Stanley. It
was like the day after,
right? And they were just looking in this area. They found some tracks that may have led somewhere, but then it went to a paved road, so they've lost the tracks and all this stuff. But while he was out searching, his truck broke down, and he actually got a ride from Frankie
Lee Castile.
Yeah. And he noticed, so this is July. It doesn't rain much in July. It's very dry. We get a lot of forest fires during that time because it's just so dry and hot.
Yes.
And Lee noticed, Ken's brother, that Frank's truck was wet in the back. Like maybe it had just been washed out,
but it wasn't wet anywhere else. Though. It was just like the back of the Jeep or the truck. Like it was
sus.
Yeah. And the fact that my thing is if something stands out to you enough for you to remember it and make the mental note of that's odd, then it's probably odd. It's probably odd. So
he gets this ride from him, and whether Frank is guilty or not, he was convicted, but I don't know.
I don't know either. And it seems crazy to me that if he could murder 3 people for what seems to be little to no reason, and if there is a reason, very not significant for
murder.
Right.
I would not be anywhere.
I wouldn't imagine him be the type of guy that's going to stop me like, hey, man, do you need a ride?
Yeah.
Like, I'll take you to the closest gas station for the payphone. Like.
Yeah.
Cold-blooded murder, gives a ride to a stranger whose car broke down. Like,
and it happens to be the brother of the missing person. I don't know. So many questions. Anyway.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've never murdered 3 people, and I'm not necessarily going to offer a ride to, like, a man because I'm a woman, but I'm also not necessarily turning a blind eye to someone that might need assistance on the side of the road when it's not a populated area.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to assess the situation and, like, what the risks are for me
If I don't want to
assistance.
stop, I call 911 and say,
Exactly.
hey, something's happening.
Somebody's a car has broken down and they need help.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I do.
Yes. Okay.
So anyway, back to Frank and Susie. During this time, Frank has a mistress. Your mom.
Sharon, what were you doing?
No, it's not your mom. But this girl named Sharon Hill. And kind of after all this happened.
In 1996.
Yeah.
The police got a tip.
Yeah.
That said, you need to speak to Sharon Hill.
Mm-hmm.
My mom. Not really my mom, but my mom is Sharon too.
So,
yeah.
They go to Sharon, and Sharon actually in this time has received just some weird things in the mail.
Some anonymous letters, just odd
newspaper clippings
of
from
this murder. Yeah,
and some of her neighbors are even getting like.
This is 8 years later.
Yeah, this is some significant time later.
Her neighbors got anonymous letters about someone like witnessing somebody murder the victims, someone who
and it names the victim.
Involved.
I mean,
yeah, like weird stuff. So Sharon, who's not being responsible, and Frankie, who's a cheater, all the things. So weird. It's so weird. What would you do if you're like, I got a boyfriend, might know he's married, might not know he's married. Then all of a sudden you start getting stuff in the mail that's like, your boyfriend,
ask him about it,
murdered these people, and I saw it with my own 2 eyes, but I don't even tell you my name.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy.
It is crazy, and I would try to vet it. But in the 80s, it would be very hard.
I feel like in the 80s, this was probably a normal thing that people did.
Yeah, it's
because
like
there's no
comments.
social media, there's no cell phones. Like,
I would, if I was in
landlines.
Susie's position, I wanted to get back at my husband's fucking mistress. I would.
Oh, for sure.
I would lose my mind and send her crazy shit.
It's like the ultimate 1988 troll thing to do.
Yeah.
1996 troll thing to do.
Yeah.
But I'm like, this was 8 years later.
I know, which is weird.
So I'm assuming that they were not having an affair at the time of the murders.
That makes sense.
Oh, so Miss Susie's just holding on to some tea.
That would make sense because 2 years after that, in 1998, I forgot about this. So there's this recording between Susie.
I need to collect myself and all these thoughts.
Frank and Sharon. And Sharon's the one who actually recorded it. And it's like a 5-hour recording of them talking about this.
Yeah, she agreed. The cops
were
like
wire
the house, basically.
So it's a 5-hour conversation, and Frank
between the three of them.
I know. Could you imagine?
The girlfriend, the husband, and the wife.
I would shoot his ass. Anyway, it's 5 hours long, and Frank never says he did it, but there's alluding to it, and he
never says he doesn't.
Yeah.
Or didn't.
Yeah.
Or doesn't know who did it.
And we don't have access to it because it's closed. So the jury got to hear it, which is good. But because the jury got to hear it, it was overturned later.
Yes.
Because his lawyers come back and say, we need a retrial because that should have never been. And you made a good point about Tennessee law.
Yeah, so Tennessee law, as it sits right now, is a one-party state. So that means if you call me and I record that phone call, I don't have to have your permission. It's 2 parties involved. Me being one of them and saying it's okay that this is recorded is enough. I don't have to tell you I'm recording it. I don't have to get your permission to share it. Nothing. And that typically goes for audio and video. Back then, though, I'm wondering if Tennessee was a 2-party state or a participating party state. So every participant, or especially if it's being used against someone, that you would have to get their permission beforehand to even record it.
Yeah, which is
so technically even the police couldn't have used whatever they heard or learned in that conversation to even investigate further.
Right.
If that was the law back then.
Right.
If it was a two-party or participating party law, that leads me to believe that why that evidence was why this conviction got overturned, and it was the whole thing was retried just based solely on this piece of evidence, makes me think that back
The law
then
changed.
it was not a one-party state.
Okay. That makes sense.
I could be wrong
because Georgia isn't. You
Yes.
have to have permission in
Yes.
Georgia. So that could very well be it.
Yeah, so if you live in Tennessee, be careful what you do.
People can record you without your permission
and use it for whatever they want.
And I just recently learned you can post your surveillance videos without anyone's permission because that's your public
It's your
property. Or if it's facing public property, as long, I mean,
it's on your private property that you own. Yep.
Crazy. Okay, so in 2000, he wasn't convicted for 10 years. Like this went unsolved for 10 years. What?
Are we going to talk about the letters again?
Do you want to?
Or are we going to tell them later about where they came from?
Oh.
Like for sure. Like police confirmed it.
Yeah, tell them.
Okay, so.
The letters.
Y'all. Oh my God.
Yeah, we should have said that before the recording. I don't know though. Maybe she.
Okay. I just can't believe they were all three in a room together.
I know.
Police were able to confirm that the letters that Sharon was getting and that Sharon's neighbors were getting about these murders were in fact from Susie, Frank's wife.
And she admits that in court.
Yes.
She says she was just a mad
and jealous wife. And like wanted to basically send this to Sharon and the people around Sharon so that hopefully Sharon would like not want to talk to him anymore. I'm like, just leave him.
Yeah. It was the 80s, 90s.
But like in those letters, she says she witnessed him murder these people.
And then later on the stand said, no, we were at our anniversary camping trip or whatever, which is crazy. That's so crazy.
I'm sorry, but like if I'm going to tell somebody, my husband, I watched him murder these people. It's because I want him to go to prison, not because I give a dang about his girlfriend.
Yeah.
Like,
but there are crazy, jealous people out there. I think there are two sides to this. So,
okay.
So anyway, the jury convicts again after like 2 or 3 hours, like no time, on little to no physical evidence that
there was also the witness that said. Witnesses said they saw a woman washing out a truck.
Yeah, during this time.
In the same area they were camping in.
But that was from someone from Walden County Services, like a firefighter, EMS, police, and said that they saw a woman washing out the back of her Jeep, and it was bloody. And they were like, what's up? And she said that she had just slaughtered a pig.
Yeah.
But that kind of makes me think that, I don't know.
The Jeep matched the Jeep that Castile owned.
Yes. He was later seen driving it.
Yeah.
So that's not a pretty picture.
And the brother, when he got the ride, he said, I thought it was weird that the back of the Jeep was wet and it had not rained.
Right.
So.
Red flags.
Yes. But
no hard evidence.
No. There's zero physical evidence linking this man to these murders.
So
zero.
These 3 men were shot at close range. Some in the head, some in the chest, whatever.
One was shot multiple times.
But no guns that were registered to Earl, Frank,
Castile, yeah,
were proven to be. That could have been the technology of the time, but none of the guns were connected to him.
Well, he also owns 130-something acres, so that gun could have been anywhere.
So anyway, in 2003, the jury convicts again. He is sentenced to life, and as of May 25th, 2019, Frank sat in jail, and he died that day. So as early as 2019, he was in there. He was 71. Probably went to jail in
They
his
never really
40s.
said what, like, how he died, but it's
He's
assumed
old.
that it was just natural causes, and then
Yeah.
after spending so long in jail and stuff, or in prison, but there are just so many unanswered, unknown things, like, and I guess maybe because it was so long ago, like, the way that files were kept weren't on a computer. You know, they were
And
all
evidence is
paper things.
destroyed.
Yes, especially after a case is closed. They just toss that stuff. I mean, it's not, they don't think it's important anymore. But I just get so tore up over, I don't care how much I think someone did it and believe that someone did it. How are these juries convicting people with no evidence?
I don't know.
No freaking evidence. And like, okay, sure, you might have like one thing. But if it is circumstantial, I'm just not sending someone to prison for the rest of their life because I don't care for them or their character, and there might be one thing that kind of links them. Like,
yeah. No. Maybe the jurors saw it as like several links and they couldn't get past that. You know, like there's just too many coincidences.
Things, yeah, yes. Like, you can't explain everything away.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, I would have a very hard time being like, yep, you didn't just murder one person, you murdered 3 people for no reason.
Except for that they were on your land.
Right. And just went on about your business.
And the only update we've had from this is a book that Frank's son, Franklin Trevor, he goes by Trevor, he wrote, and you can actually get it on Amazon. It's called Statement Effect, State versus Castile. Haven't read it, haven't looked into it, but we should and see what his son says. He's saying his dad is innocent.
Yes. Something about like the state's effect versus facts, like,
yeah, that's the whole thing.
How they might have wrote this story for the jury that made all their things coincidences go one direction, but like, how many directions can you make those things go into?
So that's what we have. I mean, the news update that we've seen was from 2019 when he died, and then it brought up all this Signal Mountain 3, which was huge in, the 80s and 90s. So that's where the story may end.
Do you think he did it?
I think he was a grumpy old man. I wouldn't have convicted him based on the knowledge we know. But I know grumpy old men can, like, lose their shit sometimes. Just like grumpy old women, like his wife. Like,
yep.
It seemed like they were, like, toxic.
To say the least.
Toxic. And that's where the story ends. Thanks for listening to the Expired Podcast. Until next time, like, follow, share, subscribe.